Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to look at some really useful linking words. Words that help you show the difference between two ideas or explain why something happened and what the result was. When you write or speak in English, these words make your ideas flow better and sound more natural. They're great for conversations, and they'll also make your writing sound more advanced. Maybe you've already heard some of them before, but you're not quite sure how to use them in your everyday English. Don't worry, I'll explain everything step by step and give you examples so you can use them confidently. Okay, before we start, remember, when you talk or write, you usually want to organize your ideas. For example, you say what happened first, what happened after, and finally, how it ended. You also want to add extra information that connects to your main idea. And to do that, we use linking words, also called connectors. We talked about some of them in another video. If you haven't seen it yet, you'll find the link in the description. But today, we'll focus on two things: linking words to show contrast and linking words to show reason and result. So let's get started. A very common and simple connector you already know is but. Listen to these examples. He studied a lot, but he failed the exam. I like coffee, but I don't like tea. It was cold, but she went swimming. And you probably also know, however. It's a bit more formal and we often use it in writing. But what other words can you use to show contrast? Do they all mean the same thing? And when should you use each one? Let's find out. All three mean something similar to but or however, but we use them slightly differently depending on the situation or tone. Although is used to show contrast, often when something is surprising. Although it was cold, she went swimming. It means it's surprising that she went swimming because it was cold. Even though is stronger than although. It makes the contrast clearer and more emphatic. Even though he studied a lot, he failed the exam. Here, the result is unexpected. He studied hard, but still failed. Now, these connectors don't always have to go at the beginning of the sentence. You can also put them in the middle, between the two ideas. She went swimming, although it was cold. He failed the exam, even though he studied a lot. Both positions are correct. The meaning stays the same, but the focus changes a little. When you start the sentence with although or even though, you're putting more focus on the contrast or surprise. Although it was cold, she went swimming. Here, you're highlighting the surprising condition first. It was cold. When you place it in the middle, you're focusing first on what actually happened, and then you add the contrast as extra information. She went swimming, although it was cold. The main focus is on what she did, not the contrast. Both options are natural. It's just a matter of emphasis. Though has the same meaning as although, but it's more informal. You'll hear it more in conversations. Though it was cold, she went swimming. And here's something interesting. We can also use though at the end of a sentence. The coffee was good. I prefer the tea, though. The hotel was expensive. Nice view, though. When though comes at the end, it sounds friendly and conversational. Notice there's a full stop. They're two separate sentences. These two mean exactly the same. There's no difference in meaning. We use them to say something happened even though something could have stopped it. We arrived on time despite the traffic, or we arrived on time in spite of the traffic. After despite or in spite of, we use a noun or ing, not a full sentence. Let's look at some more examples. With a noun. Despite the rain, we went on a city tour. Our journey was enjoyable in spite of the traffic. With an ing form, We decided to go on an evening excursion despite feeling tired. In spite of being expensive, the guided tour was worth it. We never say despite of, only in spite of. Both while and whereas mean the same thing. They compare two opposite ideas, but whereas sounds a little more formal. While a ride is short, a journey can take hours or even days. Whereas some people enjoy organised tours, others prefer independent travel. We often use these in essays or when we want to sound more balanced and descriptive. Let's do a quick summary with the main ideas. But is simple and very common. It can be used in everyday conversation and in writing. Although, though, and even though, we use them to show something surprising. Despite and in spite of. They are followed by a noun or ing. While and whereas compare two opposite ideas. We use them in formal situations. Now, let's put this into practice. Here's a short story. Last year, I travelled with my cousin to Madrid and visited several museums. It was raining, but there were many people on the streets. The weather was awful, but we still enjoyed exploring the city. Then we went to Barcelona. I loved the beach, but my cousin preferred the busy streets of the city. Can you use other connectors to improve it? Let's look at it one by one. It was raining, but there were many people on the streets. Here, I want to highlight that the rain didn't stop people from going out. So, I can say, although it was raining, there were many people on the streets. If I want to sound a bit more surprised, I can say, even though it was raining, there were many people on the streets. Next, the weather was awful, but we still enjoyed exploring the city. Here, I can change it to sound more descriptive. Despite the awful weather, we still enjoyed exploring the city. And last one, then we went to Barcelona. I loved the beach, but my cousin preferred the busy streets. We can make this sound smoother by using a connector that compares two ideas. Then we went to Barcelona. While I loved the beach, my cousin preferred the busy streets of the city. See how these small changes make the story flow more naturally? Alright, let's continue. Now that we've seen how to show contrast, let's move on to another really important group of linking words, the ones we use to show cause and effect. These connectors help us explain why something happens, or what the result is. They're super useful in both speaking and writing because they make your ideas sound logical and well connected. Let's start with one you already know. We use because to give a reason for something. It answers the question, why? We stayed home because it was raining. He passed the test because he studied hard. You can put because in the middle of a sentence or at the beginning, depending on what you want to emphasize. Because he studied hard, he passed the test. Both are correct. The difference is small, but here's the tip. When you start with because, you focus more on the reason. When you put it in the middle, you focus more on the result. These two words have the same meaning as because, but they sound a bit more formal or polite, and they're great for writing or professional situations. We didn't go out since it was too late. I took an umbrella as it looked like rain. They're often used at the beginning of a sentence, especially when the reason comes first. Since the weather was terrible, we decided to stay in. In spoken English, because is much more common, but since and as make your writing sound smoother and more natural. Now let's look at a connector for result. So is the most common and natural way to show what happened as a result. It was raining, so we stayed home. She worked hard, so she got promoted. So is super common in everyday English, both spoken and written, but it's quite informal. If you need something a bit more formal, there are other options. Therefore, and as a result. Both of these mean the same as so, but they're used more in writing, presentations, or formal speech. It was raining. Therefore, we stayed home. She worked hard. As a result, she got promoted. Notice that therefore and as a result usually go at the beginning of a new sentence, often after a semicolon or a full stop. They sound more structured and formal, perfect for essays, reports, or academic writing. Because of and due to, these are very common too, but they're followed by a noun or ing form, not a full sentence. The match was cancelled because of the rain. The flight was delayed due to technical problems. You can think of them as the noun versions of because or since. Quick tip: because, since, and as are followed by a subject plus verb. Because of and due to are followed by a noun. Because it rained, we stayed home. Because of the rain, we stayed home. All right. Let's do a quick summary. So, shows result. Therefore, as a result, they show result, but they are used in more formal situations and in writing. Because, since, as, they show reason, because of, due to. They show reason as well, but are followed by a noun phrase. So remember, these connectors help you explain why something happened and what came next. They make your English sound clearer, more logical, and more professional. Let's see one last example. How can you improve this paragraph using some of the connectors we have seen today? Last year, I travelled with my cousin to Madrid. It was raining, but the streets were still busy. The weather was bad, so we visited some museums. After that, we explored some small towns nearby. They were small, but they were interesting. Then we went to Barcelona. There were many things to see and do, and it was very exciting. It was our favourite part of the trip. This version is correct and easy to understand, but it uses very basic connectors like but, so, and. The sentences feel short and separate, almost like a list of events. That's normal for a B1 learner, but we can make it sound much more natural and fluent. Here is the improved version. Last year, I travelled with my cousin to Madrid. Although it was raining, the streets were still busy and full of life. Since the weather was awful, we decided to spend the day visiting several museums. Afterwards, we explored some small towns nearby, and even though they were tiny, they were actually very charming and interesting. Then we headed to Barcelona. There were so many things to see and do that the city felt exciting from the moment we arrived. Therefore, it quickly became our favourite part of the trip. Now let's break down what changed. Instead of repeating but, we use although and even though. These connectors make the story sound more natural and less repetitive. I replaced the simple so and used since to explain the reason and therefore to show the result. I also replaced after that for afterwards. This sounds more advanced and more connected. In the second version, I added small descriptive details like full of life, tiny but charming, headed to, and from the moment we arrived. These make the story feel more alive and less like a list. Using a variety of linking words helps you sound more fluent, avoid repetition, connect ideas logically, create smoother storytelling, and express contrast, reason, and result more clearly. In other words, this is exactly how you move from B1 to B2 English. And that's it for today. Now you know how to use connectors for contrast, cause, and effect like a pro. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more lessons like this one.